Matt Zeller is the Democratic candidate for the 29th Congressional District. He is an Afghan war vet and a former intelligence officer for the CIA. He is joining us tonight from our Corning Bureau. Thanks very much for your time.
It's my pleasure, Liz. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we are coming down to the wire here, and we haven't seen a lot of polling data, but the last thing that we have is from Siena, and it shows you trailing your opponent, Tom Reed, by 14 percentage points. Do you still think you have a shot at this?
Oh, absolutely. The important thing about the poll is two things. First off, it says that 26% of the voters in the district are undecided. That's a lot of people. The second thing is it says that 71% of voters are likely to change their mind before the election. And I guess I'd add a third thing, which is that 82% of voters have never heard of me. What we know is that when folks meet me and realize that they've got an Afghan war vet who's not a career politician running against a medical debt collector in the midst of a recession, in this climate, they're apt to go with the Afghan war vet. They're sick and tired of the status quo, and my opponent represents that. And this is the other thing. It's an interesting thing about this year is, polling has not been accurate. Carl Palladino was not supposed to win the Republican primary, according to all the polls before the election. O'Donnell in Delaware was not supposed to win her primary. Lisa Murkowski was supposed to win her primary in Alaska and yet lost. Polling has been wildly inaccurate this year, and I think that once voters find out who I am, why I'm running, they're going to pick me.
You've been hitting the hustings a lot. You've been all over the district, and it's actually quite a large district. But part of the problem about getting your name recognition up is that really you've got to do it on television. And I don't just say that because we happen to be on television, but it's the best way to talk to voters. No, it's not a personal plug. But you have only got, as of the last report, $50,000 on hand compared to Tom Reed's $361,000. I mean, you haven't launched any ads yet, if I'm not mistaken. How are you going to get
Actually, we're up district-wide.
Oh, you are? When
we're
did
up
you go up?
district-wide. Yeah, we've been up district-wide for a couple of weeks now.
Oh, okay.
My ad has actually gotten fantastic response. If you haven't seen it, I'll just briefly describe it.
Please do.
Rather than go with the stereotypical political ad of, with some voiceover saying I'm going to cut taxes and cut spending and increase jobs and hiring a bunch of actors to play, cast members in it, we decided to let the guys who know me best in life tell my story and why they think I'd make a great congressman. I.e., I asked 5 of my soldiers from the war who served with me to talk about what it was like to be under my command and the type of leadership I could bring to Washington. It's entirely unscripted, it's completely genuine, and voters have found that it's extremely moving. I encourage anybody to go on YouTube, just you enter Zeller Band of Brothers, and the ad will come right up.
Okay, well, I'm going to take a look at it too because I have not seen it, but then again, I don't live in the 29th. The problem with the 29th, of course, is that you are trying to hold on to a seat that was involved in this massive scandal, and that's, of course, the Eric Massa scandal. What are you saying to people who say, Democrats maybe didn't serve us so fantastically, brought embarrassment to the district? What do you say to them in trying to convince them that, in fact, the seat should remain in the party's hands?
Yeah, I say it's a clear choice. First off, voters don't want the status quo. They don't want incumbents this year. I'm about as anti-incumbent as you can get. I'm 28 years old. I literally just got back from the war last year. I've never run for anything. But when I got back home from the war, I was disgusted at what I found in terms of the state of our current government. I feel that we have a government of the people, by the people, that's no longer working for the people. Once voters find out that I actually have a pretty comprehensive economic development plan for the district that's grounded in reality, that will put people back to work. I am the only candidate in this campaign talking about clean energy development for our district and the potential jobs that that's going to bring. People have been extremely receptive. What we've also found is that the conventional wisdom, I guess, outside of our district is that Eric somehow impacts this. Well, folks have moved on. We want to know how we're going to get back to work. And I'm the only one talking about how to actually bring jobs back. My opponent talks a great game about how we need to continue to reward American companies that outsource American jobs. I say the outsourcing's got to stop. We've got to reward companies for what I like to call insourcing, i.e. bringing those jobs back to the United States. But we've also got to make substantial investments in our energy infrastructure and the development of clean energy products that we could sell to the rest of the world.
Matt, just excuse me for just 1 second. Tom Reed is not anymore an incumbent. Am I mistaken in that?
Well, he's the former mayor of Corning. He's
Right.
got a record of raising taxes. For all intents and purposes, he's running in lockstep with the Republican Party. He's in favor of continuing the tax cuts that go to subsidizing outsourcing in this economy. He wants to privatize Social Security. He's in favor of implementing a means test for Social Security. And he feels that we should continue to just extend our efforts in Iraq and Afghanistan without any sort of definitive end state, without any sort of definitive goal.
Well, the Republicans
I mean,
could
for that,
say...
for lack of a better...
Go ahead. Please, go ahead.
Sure. Well, I was going to say, I mean, he's running the cookie-cutter Republican campaign. I mean, he's funded by Joe Barton.
Okay,
Joe
hold
Barton's
on, though. Hold on.
Republican member of Congress.
The Republicans could say
Sure.
much the same about you. I mean, you are running a standard Democratic campaign. Tell me one area where you're differing.
Not at all.
Where are you differing specifically?
Oh,
Hold on. From any votes that have been taken in the House of late that you would not have voted for?
Oh, sure. I've said up front that I'm opposed to cap and trade. I feel that it's not the right type of policy initiative that we need to actually incentivize the development of clean energy. I think tax incentives that move industry towards clean energy development will accomplish what cap and trade is currently trying to. I've said from the get-go that I am not in favor of the current practice of the healthcare bill. I mean, I've said that I find some things positive with it, but I wouldn't have voted for it while in the House because it never addressed how we were going to pay for 24 million new customers. It did nothing to address cost.
What about TARP? And what about the bailout? Would you have voted yes on TARP?
No, I think, and unfortunately, it's, you know, what we found now is that we gave the rich a bunch of money and they didn't honor their end of the agreement. They were supposed to be lending to small businesses. That's the real reason I got into this in the first place. It was through, you know, driving around my district, seeing all these businesses closing up, signs like closing our doors after 80 years. A business that opened up 80 years ago opened up in the midst of the Great Depression. The deal with TARP was simple. We, the taxpayers, gave the bank $700 billion. They were supposed to be lending to these small businesses, and yet it's clear that they weren't because all these businesses are still going out of business because they can't get bank loans. I've got a guy in my district right now who invented a clean energy construction generator, and he can't get a bank to fund the development of it, yet that's ludicrous. This guy has got a real working product. I mean, you can see the YouTube video on my website, and banks are not lending to somebody who could start employing constituents today.
You know, Matt, I've actually always been confused by this or surprised because Eric Massa resigned, if I'm not mistaken, in April. And then a month later, actually more. It wasn't until, when exactly did they settle on you? Not until March? When did they settle on you?
He resigned. He resigned in February. They decided that I was their man in April.
Okay, so there was about a month, right, in between there. I mean, and you actually moved
Correct.
from the Washington area back to the district where you were originally from. I mean, I don't see for example, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee is not putting a lot of effort into this race. I mean, why is it that you decided to do it?
It's really simple, Liz. We have an obligation to citizens to leave our country better than we found it, and we're not doing that right now. I didn't go to war for this. I want to be able to look my kids in the eye and say, Daddy did everything he possibly could to pass you on a country better than Daddy found it. I mean, that's my calling. My entire family, simple. We don't just talk about doing something, we act when our country calls. You know, a lot of people say my generation is apathetic. Folks, I've now signed up twice to serve my country. I enlisted right after 9/11 and went to Afghanistan and volunteered for frontline combat duty. My country needs me again. It's very clear that the current generation of leaders are not accomplishing what we are requiring of them. We're not moving forward. We're stagnating, and in some instances, we're regressing.
You know, also, just in closing, you've got this weird situation in the district where people actually have to vote twice. It's kind of a strange thing. You have a special election that's running concurrent to the general election. That's compliments of Governor David Patterson. Do you agree with that decision?
You know, personally, I am focused on two things. One, winning this election, and two, getting my constituents back to work. It was a decision that the governor has made. We all have to live by it. I have not been focused on the political ramifications of it. I've told people time and time again, I'm not a career politician. If you want to ask someone who is, you can find my opponent, you can find someone in Albany, you can find somebody in Washington where all these problems are being created.
Okay, Matt Zeller, I really want to thank you for your time. It's very good of you to join us. Be well.